Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss our favorite sequels in gaming. Now, of course, there's a million different sequels to love, so whether it's an actual sequel or like a prequel sequel, it does not matter. I want to know your favorite sequels in games. Some franchises have a buttload of games, of course. You know I'm going to mention Resident Evil. We got 9 coming out, which is probably like the 80th Resident Evil game. They have so many Resident Evil games out there. But there are also other franchises where it's like, you got like a nice little handful. Devil May Cry, of course. And then some where right now we might only be coming up on number 2, like the Ghost franchise. So there's a lot of sequels to love. But of course, yeah, we're going to start with Resident Evil. And I'm going to start with my favorite Resident Evil, which is Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. That is my favorite Resident Evil, although I always say this. 3 is my favorite, but RE1 Remake is the best Resident Evil game. Like that's where you go. That's where you send people when you say Resident Evil. It's at least modern. If they really can't do fixed camera angles and tank controls, then yes, you can send them to, the RE2 remake, sure. But if they can handle it, which they should be able to as an adult, RE1 remake, that's where you start. But Resident Evil 3 was always my favorite growing up. I played, all three of them. At the time, all 3 of the original games, 1, 2, and 3. I played them, when they actually came out. Had the director's cut of the first one. I had the good version of the director's cut because I had the original music, so not the, unfortunate basement version. But had all 3 of the games, and out of the first 3, number 3 was still my favorite one. A lot of people really like 2 the most, and I understand it. It's obviously it's a fun game. Like the Resident Evil games are always great, so favorite franchise. But 3 was always the one for me. I was like, it just feels so different. Like, it's a bit randomized where you have the items in different locations. Obviously the stuff with Nemesis where they have the scripted moments, and then they have where it's like, hey, do you want to fight them? Do you want to leave? It changes things up. Sometimes, if you look at videos, there's some of those choices in there where it's like, okay, that's not much of a choice really. Like there's the part where you can fall underground, or you can just get up. Like, if you want to fall in the hole, you can, but she could just climb up, and then you just get up, and then that's it. Like you just skip like a pointless chunk of gameplay. But at the same time, if you want to see it, second way through, you can see something different. So still, there's some value to it, even if some of the choices are like, why would I choose to drop down? But you can do that the second time around when you're feeling really tough. But I like the choices that you get. Some of them do actually have, decent differences. They can save you time or cause you to do different things or go to different locations, get different dialogue and videos too. Also, just going to a certain location in a certain order can get you stuff. Like that's one of my favorite things about that game, is because you can just choose what you do in a certain order, and then it's like, hey, you get a totally different cutscene. You can either find, somebody killing somebody, or you can find the aftermath of that, but you went through like a whole crazy explosion because you went to the gas station first. All sorts of stuff like that I really love about RE3. And of course, that was the first, because I was so young, RE3 is the first Resident Evil where I actually experienced the real unlockables. Like in the first game, I think technically you get the costumes just for beating the game. After that, it's the classic Resident Evil deal where it's like, hey, if you're actually good at the game, which, starting Resident Evil at 6 years old, I wasn't. So I wasn't making any sort of progress as far as unlockables in RE1 or 2. And admittedly, in RE3, I don't think I was getting like the craziest grades ever either. But in 1 and 2, that's your only option. You just have to be really good. You get through the game in a certain amount of time, certain amount of saves, infinite handgun for the first game. RE2, I didn't know for like 20 effing years even had unlockables beyond, the extreme battle mode and Tofu. So found that out and was like, oh, that's where the Gatling gun comes from. I thought it was made in RE3. That's why it became like my favorite gun ever. So RE3 comes out and it's like, hey, to get the unlockables, you have to, play on hard difficulty to get more costumes. That was the thing where you get your good grades, you get more costumes. But then Mercenaries mode, you automatically unlock it, you beat the game, and you just play it over and over and over again. You build up your money. You get, if I'm not mistaken, this is coming off of memory, unlimited handgun, assault rifle, Gatling gun, rocket launcher, and then you get the infinite ammo case where you can reload literally everything. And that's super cool. Not to mention the unlockables, if you choose to fight Nemesis, you get 2 extra weapons, and you end up getting like a little first aid spray case where you can hold 3 first aids in 1 square. And then I think if you fight them every single time, I think maybe only on hard difficulty, I don't know if it's the same way on easy, but at least on hard difficulty, if you fight them every single time, the last upgrade, you actually unlock an infinite ammo case for one of your weapons. And so you can literally just do that in game. And that's super cool. Like RE3 had a lot of variables to it that made it super fun to me, and that's why it always ended up being my favorite. Naturally, we don't have to go into the whole remake situation and all that stuff, but RE3 Remake is definitely my favorite Resident Evil game, so of course I'm going to choose that as my favorite sequel. I know, well, once again, a lot of people are going to choose 2. A lot of people who, well, heck, even people that did play 2 are, a lot of people are still going to choose 4 and stuff like that. I definitely love 4. I know it makes Leon like the #1 guy on planet Earth for Resident Evil. It's fine. We see him a lot, but let's see somebody else. I really hope he's not in 9. I want to see somebody. I want Jill, like a lot of people, like, please give me Jill. Just bring back Jill. Bring back Claire. That's what I really want. I want Jill and Claire together. But moving on to another franchise, but sticking with Capcom, Devil May Cry 3. I love Devil May Cry 5. 5 might be my favorite, but of course I'm going to shout out 3 because it was like, holy crap. Coming off of 2, which 2 was my first Devil May Cry game. So 3 is like my number 2. Like that was, I went from DMC 2, which I was like, okay, there's some stuff I like. Check out my thing where it's like good mechanics and bad video games. It has some stuff in there that's pretty cool, but it's DMC 2. And then DMC 3 came out. I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is super cool. You got an ice, a triple ice nunchaku. That's like the coolest thing in the universe to me. Like, I love that freaking weapon. So Cerberus is awesome. The boss fight for Cerberus is awesome. Of course, Cerberus coming back in 5 is amazing as well. And then updating that weapon, really, really crazy. But 3 is super fun. 3 is absolutely amazing. And then, of course, if you got the special edition of 3, you can actually play as Virgil, which was super cool. Which I didn't have that until I actually got like the HD remasters of the game. And then that's when I finally got to play the special edition version. And it was amazing because it was like, holy crap, I can play as Virgil. So that was super cool. So I really love DMC 3 for all the reasons people love DMC 3. Fighting Virgil, super effing amazing. The story in itself is super fun. Lady is like one of my favorite video game characters of all time, especially if you're going favorite female video game characters. She's just super cool. It's very simple and she's super cool. And I like her character and I like her story. And her dad's absolutely insane. And he makes for a really great villain in the craziest way possible. So I really love DMC 3 and everything that comes with that. 5, like I said, is absolutely amazing. I enjoyed 4, of course, when it came out, but like a lot of people said, it's a fun game, and then you play the game a second time, but you do it as Dante, and it's not as fun. And that's unfortunate, but it's still a fun game. And then 5 came out a million years later, and it was like, yes. This is it. And I really hope we get 6, like everybody. I want a DMC 6. I don't care if it's Dante again. I don't care if it's Nero taking over, which I think would be really cool if they actually went back to that well, like 4, and then he has a full game built around him now that they've had 2 games with him in it, and they've been able to build up what he can do. So I would love to see 6. 5 is fantastic, but I feel like 3 being almost like a classic in gaming, I feel like that's why I want to shout that out. But 5 is definitely there as well. Like I said, I technically like 5 more than I like 3. I think it's a better game overall. But man, and I think I said this somewhere else, if Capcom decided, what if we did Devil May Cry remakes? I would lose my mind. I don't know how you do that for, honestly, the first 2 games would be really, really different because the first game is just Resident Evil and then the second game is just really bad. So it's unfortunate, but there would be so many drastic changes to the combat for both the first and second game. It would be very interesting to see how those would end up being changed if they did like remakes of a modern day. But still, 3 is one of the best. 2 is 2, but it did give us Bloody Palace mode. That started in DMC 2, for what it's worth. It did give us that for the first time. But moving on to different franchises and stuff like that. Actually, still sticking with Capcom, because now we're transitioning over to fighting games. I want to give a shout out to Street Fighter Alpha 3. Back in the day, on my PlayStation 1, Street Fighter Alpha 3, and also here's another one, the Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Those 2 were like the fighting games for me. Love me some Tekken, got a bunch of Tekken. If we're going with a Tekken, honestly, I've only had, I probably hit it with Tekken 3, once again, just going with classics. But Street Fighter Alpha 3 had so many effing characters, and it's the same for Mortal Kombat Trilogy. It was that game where they were just like, here's all the characters we pretty much had in this whole franchise up till now. Just go ahead and play. So those 2 games were like, the Smash Brothers of fighting games back in the day, where it's like everyone is here. Street Fighter Alpha 3 and Mortal Kombat Trilogy. I loved those games like crazy when I was younger. And I just played them all the time because you could just pick up and play everybody. Everybody was in it. For Mortal Kombat, they had both versions of Sub-Zero. I don't even know if there was a difference. It was kind of like the Wolverine thing in VC2, where it's like, I don't know, Bone Claws, Metal Claws. I think he literally has like one assisted attack that's different. I think that's literally the only difference there. But Mortal Kombat Trilogy, they got both both the Sub-Zeros. They have Scorpion. Everyone that has been in the game up to that point was in that game, and it was crazy. You could just play as anybody. They had all the secret characters at that point. It was nuts. I loved playing that. And Street Fighter Alpha 3 is really what made me fall in love with Street Fighter. I don't think I even played Street Fighter before that. And I have no idea, what did it. Maybe I was at the arcade or something, and I was just like, I would like a Street Fighter game. And then boom, Alpha 3 hit, and it was like, oh, there's like a billion effing characters in this. You can just play as everybody. And it's just fun because with so many characters, that allows you to experiment where you kind of don't get bored. I mean, there's a lot. I think there's more people in Street Fighter Alpha 3 than there were in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I'm pretty sure, like, the thing looked like it was almost like playing Mugen. Like, the squares were so small, there were so many characters in that game. But I love playing Alpha 3. Like, that junk was super fun. Like, you could just play as everybody. Everybody was in the game. So that was super fun. Like I said, Mortal Kombat Trilogy, super fun. Definitely some of my favorite sequels in those franchises for the just collective perspective. And then, just all the characters. Everybody's here. So definitely gotta love those games for that, because those really, I think, solidify my love of the franchises. I think for Mortal Kombat, I definitely played that more at the arcade than I remember playing Street Fighter at the arcade. So I'd already had like a bit of more of an attachment to Mortal Kombat, because I just felt like I saw it more at the arcade, and it just, let's be honest, the blood and the gore probably drew me to it a little bit more. Like a lot of people where it's like, oh, Street Fighter's super cool, and it's like, what's this Mortal Kombat thing where people are like getting uppercutted and their heads explode and they get knocked down to the pit and stuff like that. So, they were both there, but one may or may not have grabbed my attention a little bit more when I was younger. And then, of course, as I grew up, the games kept going. Mortal Kombat was spinning them out like nobody's business, but it took a hot minute for another Street Fighter game to come out. So Street Fighter 4, I definitely had fun with that. It is one of my favorite Street Fighter games just because it came back. It was like, holy crap, Street Fighter's back again. I love the visuals for that. They kind of instantly left that behind, even when they went to 5. Like, it was different enough to be like I kind of get why it's kind of still there, but I felt like 5 was a bit of a departure, which, I mean, let's face it, 5 was in general, which is why I literally didn't even pick up 5 because of all the crazy issues that came with that. And then 6 has brought it right back and things are great again. But 4 came out, and it was like, I love the art style of it. The only thing that was missing was Cody. I was like, man, I wish Cody was in this. And then, of course, Super Street Fighter 4 came out, and I was like, I'm so stupid. I knew they would do that, and I bought it right off the top. I was super hyped, and this was before, kind of DLC was like the big thing. So you couldn't just be like, we'll just download like the Fighter Pass or whatever and get the characters. They're like, nope, you just don't have them. And I was like, Cody, a big effing truck right next to me. But that really sucked. I was like, man. The only character I wanted was Cody. Cody was like my dude. Like, I really, like, I fell in love with Cody as a character in Alpha 3. I was like, I like playing as this guy. So that really sucked. And then, of course, they hit me with that, like, here you go, Cody. And I was like, ooh. But I eventually, like, years and years down the line, I bought the game on Steam and bought, like, whatever it's effing called. I honestly can't remember. It's either Arcade Edition. I'm pretty sure it's Arcade Edition. Ultra Arcade, who knows? They got so many effing titles, it's ridiculous. But I finally bought, like, the final ultra final version of the game on Steam for a couple bucks. So I eventually ended up getting to play as all the characters and stuff, and I barely touched it, as we do with our Steam games. Honestly, I did the same thing with Tekken. I played the crap out of Tekken 7 when I borrowed it from a buddy basically 10 years ago. Played the crap out of it, played the story, made like a custom character, Asuka and all that stuff. And then I just never ended up buying the game. Always wanted to, because I was like, I still have the save file on my PS4, but I never did it. And then eventually it was like, here's the final thing. And of course, now we're gonna make Tekken 8. So I was like, all right, well, let me buy like the full complete Ultimate Edition of Tekken 7. And then I played it like a couple of times, and I was like, all right, let me try Noctis. And that was it. And like, I have not really touched that game since. So still love Tekken 7. Also a phenomenal sequel. Absolutely amazing. I love the crap out of that, because I did play that a lot when it first came out, and it was definitely the one where I was like, okay, I played through all the Tekken games except I think 4. I think even 4 I somehow played through, the arcade. I think 5 is when they really started the stories anyway, but I played through all the stories and stuff, so I would always end up playing them. Somehow I'd get the games. It was kind of like Call of Duty back in the day. Like, I would always somehow know somebody that had it, and then that's how I would get the story. It's like, okay, I'm done with Call of Duty. But definitely love Tekken 7 when I actually was playing it a lot, and that's when was it Tekken? I think Tekken Evolution was the name of the game. The PS3 game where you could play online for free, but you could only play like 3 or 4 matches or like, playthroughs of the game. That is when I fell in love with Asuka Kazama. And I know they're still doing her dirty because she should definitely be like a more important part of the story, but that's neither here nor there right now. But that's when I like really got into it with her character and was like, oh, this is my favorite like Tekken character now. So Asuka Kazama's my favorite. I guess since we're in the fighting realm, for Street Fighter it's Sakura. What was it? Street Fighter Cross Tekken, of course, had like the ultimate team up for me, even though I never bought that game. But I was like, holy crap, they put, Sakura and Asuka are like the pairing in that game, and I was like, yes, that's perfect for me. So I got Sakura as my favorite in Street Fighter, Asuka is my favorite in Tekken, and of course, I'm a Sub-Zero guy when it comes to Mortal Kombat. Sub-Zero is like my number one. I'm a sucker for ice powers. He has my favorite color, which is blue. I hate the fact that Ed Boon likes Scorpion so much because they keep killing Sub-Zero all the effing time. That's why they do that, for anyone that never knew that. Like, Scorpion is Ed Boon's favorite. So that's why it's, and of course his rival is Sub-Zero. So every time they do it, Sub-Zero has to get his butt rocked. And I'm like, I hate that they have to do that, but it's like, well, Scorpion's his favorite and his rival Sub-Zero, so he has to beat his rival. And I'm like, I'm tired of seeing Sub-Zero get killed. I'm tired of seeing that in like every effing, premiere. It's like, here's Sub-Zero getting just stomped on. I'm like, please stop doing that to my favorite. Please stop. But love Sub-Zero, love his powers. Always thought that was super cool. So Sub-Zero is my favorite. Then you got Sakura, and then you got Asuka for my fighting games. But definitely Mortal Kombat Trilogy, Street Fighter Alpha 3, and Tekken 3, just so good. Like, just back in the day, PS1, those were the, that's when, those are the big 3 for me anyway when it comes to fighting games. But that's where I was at during that era. And then moving on from those, like I said, Tekken 7 was definitely amazing. I know everyone's loving Tekken 8, up and down at least. But, I haven't gotten to that one just yet. Street Fighter 6 I played a little bit of. I do have it because I got an insane deal on the collector's edition where it was literally like less than $60, and I was like, I can't pass that up. So I bought it even though I wasn't really ready to play. I was like, I have to get it. It's the ultimate edition, so I have at least the first season pass, and then I'll get the second one eventually. But enjoying what little experience I have with both of those right now. I played the crap out of that Tekken 8 demo. When that first came out, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm all over this demo. So definitely been enjoying those. Mortal Kombat 1 was Mortal Kombat 1. I think 11 might be my favorite Mortal Kombat game. There are a couple in there as we kind of jump around time. Like I said, I mentioned for Street Fighter it was 4, and now we got 6. For Tekken I played all of them, but 7 definitely stood out the most. For Mortal Kombat, played all of them, had all the games. Except Annihilation. Annihilation was like the updated version of Trilogy where it was like, here's everyone plus all the new everyones. I do wish I had that game. But Mortal Kombat 11 came out, and I was like, this is my favorite Mortal Kombat game. The MK reboot, like MK9, super cool because going through the original game and like having like the reboot and like the actual story to it when that really started was 9. Definitely awesome. At least, having cutscenes in game. They had the story like, Deadly Alliance, which, let's be honest, that's one of the craziest things that ever happened in gaming, where it's like, they killed Liu Kang. That's the opening. That was crazy. Like, just, I wish I could go back to having that feeling. That's one of those things where if a game came out today and it was like, oh, the crazy twist of the game, that would be the twist. And it's in the opening effing cutscene where it's like, oh, Shang Tsung and Quan Chi teamed up. Okay. And then they snap Liu Kang's neck. And it was like, this is the opening cutscene in Mortal Kombat. They killed everybody and just start winning. Like, it's a crazy intro to a Mortal Kombat. It's an insane game. Like, Deadly Alliance was a really crazy, messed up story when you really think about it. They were just like, yeah, they just killed him. Killed the main dude just off. And then they just start beating everybody. It was like, wow, this game is nuts. So that was a crazy one back in the day. But Deception with the Conquest mode, bring that back. Please bring back Shaolin Monks. I know everybody says it. Give us a remaster. Give us something. Love Shaolin Monks. I would love an actual sequel to that as well. But Mortal Kombat 11, I think, is my favorite Mortal Kombat game overall. So, spent a lot of time with Capcom. but we were able to jump over at least a little bit to the other fighting games, so we got that. Here's an old one, just to connect a tiny bit with Tekken, to do a throwback Namco. Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man is technically a sequel to, obviously, Pac-Man. And I love Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man is way better than the original Pac-Man, in my personal opinion. Everybody has their own difference, their own opinions and, hopes and dreams and all that stuff for Pac-Man. For me, it's just Miss Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man is better. It's just better in every conceivable way. So I love Miss Pac-Man. That does technically count as a sequel. That's a really good one. But to move on to other things, we'll go to the big story-driven side of things, from Sony. I have to go God of War. God of War 2, I played so much. I think I mentioned this before. I mentioned it a couple times, actually. PS2 games tragically stolen one day. Lost most of them. The only couple of PS2 games I have left, I did add the bouncer to it because I bought the bouncer like years later. Shout out to the bouncer. That was fun. I know, it's got its issues, but that junk was crazy back in the day. Like, you could just choose what you do in a fighting game. That's nuts. Also, it has more cutscenes than gameplay, but PS2 era. But most of my PS2 games were stolen. The ones I had left over, Guitar Hero 2 and 3. Shout out to Guitar Hero. Good sequels. I might like 2 a little bit more with the music, I'm not sure. But, shout out to those. Flatout 2, another good sequel. And then RE4, one of the best sequels. Metal Gear Solid 3, because I hadn't talked about Metal Gear, but MGS 3, definitely one of my favorite. Might be my favorite. Also might be biased due to the fact that PS2 games were stolen. You play a lot of what you got left. But it's also fantastic. A lot of people say 3 is their favorite. And then the last game was God of War 2. Had the first one, loved the second one. I've played I keep saying that. I always want to be like, I played every God of War game. I haven't, because I haven't played Ascension, which most people didn't, I guess. And I never ended up playing the PSP games. But I played all the mainline games, and I love God of War. Like, I bought the ultimate collector's edition for both, the most recent ones. Like, I love God of War. I'm one of those people that gets annoyed when they're like, when God of War 2018 came out, it really became like a real deep emotional story. It's like, man, that story literally starts in the first game with Kratos trying to kill himself because he is depressed after everything that's happened to him. That series has always had emotion. Yes, it was always tied to the hack and slash genre of the time. And of course, everyone talks about the sex scenes. There's like one per game. It's not like it's all over the place. But of course, you have sex in a certain moment. And so that gets on people's minds. Like, that's crazy. You're like ripping minotaurs apart and stuff like that. And then you can press circle and have sex. But it's not that big of a deal. It's not that much of the game. But that's what people think about. They think about just all the violence and stuff. But I'm like, the story of that game it's literally a Greek epic. Like, the story of those games are absolutely amazing. I always get tired of people acting like, yeah, they finally added story and depth. And I'm like, no, the story and depth and emotion was all there. It was just rage. People look at rage like it's not a valid emotion to express. It's crazy. It's different than what people expect, but very valid, very valid. Like, just, if you don't want to play them, watch a retrospective or something. Like, the story to those games are insanely emotional and deep and absolutely phenomenal. I always hate that talk. 2018, it became emotional and story driven. It was there from day one. From moment one, it was always there. Trust me on that. God of War has always had a great story. But love those games. 2, at this point, if it had trophies and whatnot, that was one of those games where it was like, yeah, I would have platinum that, because once again, I had like 6 games left. But it was there. Love me some God of War 2. Love the new God of War games because they're both sequels, 2018 and Ragnarok. I'm one of the people that does like Ragnarok more. I think Ragnarok got better because it was so bombastic and crazy and you go all over the place, you meet more people. I like that more. I understand why people feel like 2018 was a bit more honed in because it was mostly just Kratos and Atreus. So I get why people like that one a little more story-wise, but I'm more on the Ragnarok side of things. I definitely love that game. So Ragnarok, MGS3, love MGS4, but once again, probably time bias of, man, I got 6 effing games, let me replay MGS3 again for, the millionth time. So MGS3 is definitely that one for me personally. But man, lots of franchises, lots of good sequels. Obviously, there's tons more. Shout out to Power Stone 2, definitely one of my favorite games. Welcome to the Power Stone world. And naturally, the final Smash Brothers. Smash Brothers Ultimate is my favorite Smash Brothers. It counts as a sequel. They never did numbers for those, but Ultimate is definitely my favorite Smash Brothers. Everyone is here. The only person they're missing is All Might, because I am here. But I'm gonna end things there. Would love to know your favorite sequels. There's tons of things out there. I didn't even get to GTA. It's Vice City. But Would love to know your favorite sequels, whether they're prequels or actual just full-on sequels. Please let me know. So, favorite sequels, maybe we'll do disappointing sequels. Only one I really have for that, admittedly, would just be Devil May Cry. And I guess the Mirror's Edge Catalyst is a reboot, so that doesn't really count. And also, we could go with a couple Resident Evil games. So maybe we'll do that, disappointing sequels at some point. But I want to know your favorites right now. We'll keep it lighthearted. So please, let me know your favorite sequels throughout the gaming realm. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.